Chapter 4. I close my photo album. I don't have pictures of the most important things that happened over the next year. How can you take pictures of such terrible things? But I can see them in my head like photos, the expressions on people's faces, the backgrounds, everything. One day, a few months after Oma Miriam died, I answered the door and a postman asked me to sign for the parcel he was delivering. I signed and took it into the house with much curiosity. Mother and Auntie Leah ran over excited. All the children gathered around. A parcel, perhaps a friend was sending us food, special treats or clothes for the children. Maybe it was from Uncle David or Uncle Aaron. But no, the postage was German. In fact, as I looked closer, I realized it was from Dachau. It's from Uncle Peter, I exclaimed. I ripped it open. Auntie Leah's face was full of expectation. We had not received a letter from him for 1 full year. He'd been arrested 2 years ago, and at first he'd written all the time. Then he'd had a friend from Camp Bright to tell us that he'd gotten into some kind of trouble, and instead of letting him out, as they did with most of the people who were there, for petty offenses, he was being held. And that was the last thing we'd heard. Auntie Leah was afraid he'd tried to organize the prisoners against their jailers or had become a spokesman for them. The small box tied with string was inside the wrapping, and a note. Auntie Leah grabbed the note. I tore open the box. But what was this? Was it a strange joke of Uncle Peter's, sending us a box full of ashes? Auntie Leah started to scream. Mother took the note from her and read it. She looked at the children who were starting to cry because their mother was so upset. Daniel, take the children to their room. I'll be there in a minute. Auntie Leah was screaming and crying. I still couldn't understand what was happening. And then finally it dawned on me. I hustled the children into their room. They were all crying, even Frederick. I sat them all down on the bed. It's father. He's dead, isn't he? Frederick sobbed. I nodded. He was dead and the Nazis had sent us his ashes. I stopped taking pictures after Uncle Peter's death. I just didn't have the heart for anything after that. I dragged myself to school, but my marks dropped because I couldn't concentrate. I didn't want to study. What was the point? So I could grow up to be a teacher, an engineer, a lawyer. All those professions were banned to Jews. I couldn't see my future anymore. So many of my school friends were gone now, the lucky ones having left for other countries while they were still allowed to do so. Erica was no companion, really. She became even more quiet and withdrawn, practicing her violin constantly. Frederick was now my closest friend. I started to read a lot and would spend hours in my room with my books. My favorite one was The Count of Monte Cristo, which I read at least 5 times. I suppose in better times, mother and father could have helped me more, but they were so upset themselves. They didn't see how unhappy I'd become. Mother spent all her time going from consulate to consulate, desperately trying to get us papers so we could leave the country. She must have tried the black market too, because her mink coat suddenly was gone one day, along with some of her best jewelry, but nothing worked. We were stuck. I almost failed school that year, and summer holidays came as a great relief. Slowly, I started to feel better. I swam at the Jewish community swimming pool, played soccer, and sunbathed in our yard. Erica also perked up. She often brought girlfriends over, and they giggled and made eyes at Frederick and me. We were both interested in a couple of 15-year-old girls at the sports club, but they thought we were too young. Still, the sun and the heat and the lazy days all made me feel better. And I guess the passing of time helped too. Still hurt when I thought about Oma, Miriam, and Uncle Peter, but not as much, although I never stopped missing them. When summer was over, I felt ready to get back to school, and I buckled down to my studies. But that September, another law was passed. I can see them just like in a photo, the yellow stars with the word Jew printed on them that were all forced to wear on our clothes. Then we got the news in October that we were to be deported. That meant we were to be forced out of our homes. All our property and our clothes were to be itemized and signed over to the authorities. We were told what we could and could not pack. Naturally, they wanted anything of value, such as furs, good boots, or warm clothes. My mother made sure we packed our warm things and took along lots of food. Father took money along in case he needed to bribe anyone. They marched us through the streets of Frankfurt toward the market hall. I felt so helpless. I couldn't do anything to stop any of it. They crowded thousands of us into the cellars of the market to spend the night until the trains departed. And what happened there, I don't want to think about that. Will remembering this help me understand? How can one understand this? They were so afraid that we might leave with something of value. They hated us and despised us so much. that they body searched us